Hello and welcome to the 7th episode of the Acupuncture Storytime podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Rose, and thank you so much for joining us. Today, we have a story about labor induction. And this is something that, surprisingly, I have a lot of experience in because there was this WhatsApp chat of local doulas in my area. And somehow one of them had a good experience with me with one of her clients, and I ended up being the person who was recommended on this WhatsApp chat for all of the doulas in the area, and I do a lot of inductions. So we have a story with a clinical gem about labor induction that I learned the hard way about how to get better results, and we're going to get to that. Before we do, I have a mini story here, and this is a story about tea, because I grew up in the South. I grew up in Atlanta, and every summer my mother made sweet iced tea with Lipton, and I loved drinking iced tea in the South. That was a lifestyle. It was great. But something happened when I turned 15, which is that one of my good friends, Matt, got me a teapot, ceramic teapot for my birthday, and a couple of teas from this new store in the mall called Teavana, and they were loose teas, and I did not know that loose teas existed. And we drank them, and I was like, whoa, this is really good. This is a new experience. And from then on, I was a serious Teavana customer. I was getting all of the teas and loving the loose tea lifestyle. And that continued until I was a student in acupuncture and Chinese medical school. And I met a woman named Hui-Ling Altschuler, who is a tea master from Taiwan, where tea is a lifestyle. And she and her husband had me to their house, and they made a tea party for me with 5 different teas. We drank one after another, and these were the most delicious teas I had ever had in my life. This was like a life-changing tea experience. It was so good. And from then on, their tea is the only tea that I drink. My wife is also converted. She loves it. And my kids, 4 and 6 years old, love when we brew up pots of tea. You too can get this tea now, because Tamber Tea is the first sponsor of the Acupuncture Storytime podcast. That's TAEMBERT.com. You can go to their website. You can use the promo code Storytime10, all lowercase letters, to get 10% off your first order. You will not regret it. This tea is on a different level. It is the best quality tea in the world. So, moving on to the story. Seriously though, tambertea.com. You will not believe how good this tea is. So, labor inductions. Around 5 years ago, one of my friends brought his wife, who was overdue. And whenever one of my friends brings their wife or themselves, I feel this pressure, like I have to prove myself, I have to do a good job. And labor induction is pretty easy because there's this whole series of acupuncture points that are called the forbidden points in pregnancy, because they can cause labor to start. So you don't do them. Labor induction, you just do all the forbidden points, and then voila, the baby comes out. And I do it a lot, and it works pretty well. For this woman, we did the labor induction points, and nothing happened. I said, okay, we're going to do a second round. It'll be good. We did the second round. Nothing happened, and she ended up going to her doctor and getting induced with Pitocin, which is quite painful. You want to avoid that if you can. And I was a little embarrassed. I was like, oh, labor induction didn't work. So this happened again. There's a couple more patients over the years where the labor induction didn't work. And I was, confused and concerned about this. What do I do for that percentage of patients? And one day I have a patient, I do one induction, doesn't work. I do a second induction, it doesn't work. And I think to myself, this woman was really stressed. And that reminded me of a story that was told to me by my wife's second cousin, who is a doula. And this doula said that once she was doing a labor in a hospital with a woman, and everything was progressing along beautifully, and all the machines were going like boop, boop, boop. And then the woman's mother-in-law came into the hospital room, and the woman in labor smiled, and she was like, "Oh, thank you for coming." And the mother was like, "Oh, I brought all sorts of nice things. I'm going to help you. It's going to be great." And they're smiling at each other, and they're so happy. But then all of a sudden, all the machines are just like, boop. And the doctors come in, they're like, "What's going on? The labor's completely stopped." And everyone's trying to figure it out. And the mother-in-law's like, "What can I do to help?" And the woman's like, "Get me ice chips." And the mother-in-law leaves to go get her ice chips. And all of a sudden, the machine's just like, boop, boop, boop. And like, "Oh, okay, everything's better." Then the mother-in-law comes back in, and it's like, boop. And the doula says to the mother-in-law, "I think you have to leave." And the mother-in-law was a little bit upset, but she left, and the labor just all of a sudden progressed again. It was normal. And what was funny about this case is on the surface, these two women were just so amiable and chatty and happy, and the daughter-in-law seemed to be perfectly happy to have the mother, but inside she was freaking out, and this completely stopped the labor because stress stops the hormone of oxytocin, which is what causes labor. And so I was thinking about this story, and I thought maybe the reason why these women who aren't responding to acupuncture techniques for induction is because of the stress. And so I made this patient who had had 2 treatments already 2 bags of Xiaoyaosan, which is an herbal formula, basic, safe, normal herbal formula for stress relief. And baby popped right out after that. And I was like, wow. And from then on, whenever I would have a patient that didn't have inductions in 2 treatments, I would just give them a bag of Xiaoyaosan, and it has literally never failed me. That always makes, in those cases, makes the labor happen. Just happened last week, and the reason I'm doing this podcast now is because some mother just sent me a text message. Let me find it. It said, just tonight. "Hi, gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. Thank you so much. The tea really helped me. Came today at 8:10 a.m. And so, as an example, if I did the induction and I just noted this woman seemed really stressed, and just after the first treatment, I just said, "Take these 2 bags of herbs," and boom, baby popped out. So this is a great tip to know if you are a woman who's overdue, or you are a practitioner who's trying to help. That stress stops the production of oxytocin, and if you take away the stress through whatever modality, and the Chinese herbal formula Xiaoyaosan works really well, then labor goes. So hope you enjoyed this practical and sort of funny story from Acupuncture Storytime. And no mother-in-laws were hurt in the recording of this story, I hope. See you next time.